Munster's win over the Bulls is perhaps the biggest upset of the weekend. Not only did they beat a well-rested and close to full-strength Bulls team, but Loftus is probably the hardest venue to travel to in the entire competition. We'll analyse how Munster managed to shut down the Bulls' main threats throughout the match through incredible defending. Then, we'll look at how the Bulls rampaged ahead before stumbling towards the end. Both teams were very ambitious in this game, and both teams defended well. It might seem like the first quarter of the game was error-ridden and slow, but really, these were two brilliant teams gunning and countering each other from the start. The Bulls made 161 passes, while Munster made 185. Likewise, the Bulls made 128 carries and Munster 122. However, both teams had fairly low post-contact meters with 114 and 107 respectively. This tells us a lot about how competitive both teams' defense was in this game. However, I do think this defensive parity favored Munster, given how attack-minded this Bulls team tends to be. Let's start with Munster's first try and how they managed to stretch the Bulls' defense. The Bulls are exiting from just outside their 22 after Conor Murray failed to convert a penalty into points. The idea is that they want to put a lot of pressure at the next ruck by sending the ball high with multiple loose forwards chasing. Zebo regathers at the halfway line and Sebastian de Klerk makes a good tackle. This would be a very good exit given how much pressure the Bulls are putting on Munster's ruck and how slow the ball is, allowing the defensive line to set strongly. However, 19-year-old JF van Heerden fails to recognise that the guard isn't defended, giving Murray an excellent attacking opportunity. I feel that it is important to mention his age because, while this is a very basic defensive error, he's only had a handful of caps at this level and the speed at which the rugby is being played will undoubtedly still be new to him. Also, I don't know if it was actually his fault or not. It could be that Low or Ludwig was tasked with defending on the right side. Either way, there was a breakdown of communication. The Bulls do well to shut down the attack, but it has resulted in a stretched defensive line. Munster immediately spreads the ball wide to the opposite side of the field, and they do very well to keep the ball in play. Here, Willie Leroux makes a pretty baffling decision by coming out of the backfield to counter at the ruck. I'm honestly not sure why he would do this, as it leaves a massive amount of space for Crowley to exploit. At the ensuing lineout, the Bulls have another mishap, which we will dive into a bit later, and Munster regather with great attacking momentum. The Bulls do well not to concede a try immediately and to set a defensive line. But the Bulls forwards are too condensed, and it leaves the seam, which is this area between Caden Moody and Wilco Low, very exposed. Snyman then draws Moody, which gives Munster an overlap on the outside from which they score. The Bulls' defense was very aggressive, with a lot of speed and pressure concentrated in the midfield. Caden Moody in particular was given a lot of freedom to shoot up and shut down Munster's attack if there were opportunities. He wanted to prevent Munster from spreading the ball to the sides of the field, and for the most part this approach was successful. However, without a doubt the biggest factor in this match was Munster's defense. I might be biased as a Bulls supporter, but I genuinely believe that the Bulls' back three is the strongest in the competition. Munster did incredibly well to take away the score strength from the Bulls. There were a few reasons for this, but the biggest reason was their focus on slowing down the ball in contact and at the ruck while also drifting when needed. The Bulls played from very deep with the objective of spreading the ball to the edge. Munster identified this threat very well and focused on drifting and strong connections, particularly after the ball left the hands of the first receiver. The Bulls managed to disrupt Munster's lineout in the air and turn the ball over. Immediately at the next ruck, the Bulls are looking to spread the ball wide to stretch the defensive line. However, the Munster players keep calm and drift strongly instead of shooting up. This means that they do lose some meters, but there at least isn't a line break. Bulls spread the ball wide again. However, notice that Munster's defenders aren't absolutely gunning for Goosen in this situation. Rather, they are waiting to see what he does and then reacting accordingly. In this case, even though the attack does find space out wide, this more conservative approach has allowed them to stay connected enough to adjust efficiently. The big reason for Munster's strong defense was that they were very strong in contact and they matched the Bulls' physicality in most tackles. Here, the Bulls have a scrum and they are looking to run a strike move on the blind. Scrum collapses, giving the Bulls slower ball than what they would have wanted and allowing Munster's loose forwards free to defend. Conor Murray has enough time to assess the attack and adjust by retreating into a drift before the ball even leaves the scrum, and O'Donoghue covers the inside. This gives Munster a fairly easy defensive read and they make the tackle. From here, the Bulls run a pod but get tackled behind the gain line because of Munster's low body positioning. The next pod gets tackled behind the gain line once again, but this time it's a very dominant tackle, as Munster's prop and hooker plant both their feet, creating an immovable barrier that no player would be able to get through. This completely takes away the Bulls' attacking momentum and they send the ball high with a chase. This leads me to another strength of Munster on the night. They did extremely well to eliminate the Bulls' competing players in the air by putting many blockers in the retreating line whenever the Bulls kicked. Here, there are 4 Munster blockers, including 2 forwards, which allows for a clean take. Munster then exits, and although the next few phases are messy for both sides, it doesn't change the fact that Munster was able to stop a good attacking platform for the Bulls. The Bulls did, however, manage to come back after halftime and take control of the game. In this lineout, the Bulls are looking to maul over the line instead of looking for a strike move. Munster chooses to compete in the air, which makes sense given the Bulls' first half lineout missed throws. The Bulls manage to take the ball cleanly and set the maul. This immediately puts Munster on the back foot because they don't have enough players to make the initial hit. This forces them to take down the maul illegally, as the Bulls would have likely walked over the try line. They do have very slow ball, but many of the Munster forwards still find themselves out of the defensive line. From here, the Bulls set up 2 pods to the open side before playing back to the blind. Notice, however, that after the second carry, 3 Bulls forwards run around to the open side as a dummy pod, which also draws these 2 defenders, leaving a big gap on the blind side. This means is that Creel, Arendse and Lowe have an excellent opportunity to attack. Given how good all 3 of these players' attacking skills are, it's no wonder that they managed to get over the line. The Bulls did stumble in some key areas throughout the match, which allowed Munster to get a win in the end. In particular, their lineouts were pretty poor in the first half. The Bulls had an 82% lineout win percentage, and I feel that they were disrupted in a lot of these areas. One of the core strengths of this Bulls attack is their lineout strike moves, and I think Munster did well to weaken this area. The area where the Bulls were inaccurate was during exits. Jake White alluded to this in his post-match press conference as well, but they made many smaller areas in these situations that could easily have been avoided. Another big area that affected the Bulls a lot was their poor discipline and decision making. While both teams had similar penalty counts, the Bulls definitely came second here with that red card. While the card did affect a Bulls team that was starting to dominate the match, Munster still needed to fight to close out the match. In particular, they tried to play a lot more risk by looking for lots of crossfield kicks to exploit the space on the wings. You can see such an example in Munster's second to last try in the 56th minute. Here, Munster have been stretching the Bulls' defense by spreading the ball side to side for a few phases. Murray gives it to Wycherley, who sends it out the back to Crowley. Crowley receives the ball, however, we can see this massive gap opening up, forcing Creel to backtrack into the defensive line. Just like Munster's first try, this is an area called the seam between the last forward and the back. Because Ruan Vermaak isn't off the line quickly enough to put pressure on Crowley, it means that Creel is effectively useless in this high position. Creel plucks the gap, but it means that the Bulls' defensive line is extremely timid and on the back foot. Zebo then runs around Creel to break the line, and Munster get all the way up to the Bulls' 5-meter line. Steenekamp gives away a penalty to slow down the ball, but it's all in vain. We can't see a wide angle of the field. The Bulls' defensive line is extremely compact, with Kurtley Arendse defending in line with the posts, leaving literally half of the field exposed. Crowley then puts in an excellent crossfield kick for Hodnett, who powers over the line and draws level. I also thought that Munster showed great patience and maturity in the game. The Bulls' deadly attack managed to get them ahead, and at one point it seemed like they were unstoppable. It takes a special team to travel all the way to Loftus and to come back in the way that they did. This is a remarkable win for Munster, and it will give themselves and their fans a lot of confidence as we head to the tail end of the competition. The Bulls, on the other hand, while being almost guaranteed a playoff spot, is definitely under more pressure to perform. I also want to mention that I've made a Patreon where you can find my full notes for this match, and if you want to support the channel. Thank you for watching.